The first alarm was a thin, sharp scream that cut through the lab like a knife. Red lights flashed along the ceiling, white doors locked with loud clacks. A calm voice from a speaker tried to sound normal. "Containment breach. All personnel evacuate." Nobody moved calmly. People ran. Shoes slapped the polished floor. A man in a white coat dropped a tablet and kept running like it was on fire. Behind a glass wall, something hit the metal inside its tank. The whole frame shook. A wet, scraping sound followed, like claws dragging across a plate. Then the air itself broke. It was not an explosion. It was a tear, like a rip in a picture. A dark oval opened above the floor for half a second, and a small blue thing fell out. It landed with a soft plop. The blue thing bounced once. It was round, glossy, and alive. Like a big drop of water that decided it wanted to think. Rimuru blinked, or at least he did the slime version of blinking. His body wobbled as he looked around. Sterile white walls, cold air, a smell like chemicals and fear, red lights, loud alarms. "Well," he said, voice calm and clear, "this is not my forest." Inside him, a second voice spoke with perfect control. "Raphael. An unfamiliar environment detected. Biohazard indicators present. Recommend immediate scanning." Rimuru's body shifted a little, as if he was taking a deep breath. Rimuru. "Biohazard? Like poison?" Raphael. "More severe. Viral and parasitic markers detected in the air. High risk to humans." Rimuru looked toward the nearest window. On the other side, 2 armed guards were pushing a lab worker along. The worker kept looking back, eyes wide. His lips moved like he was praying. Another sound rose over the alarms, a heavy thud, then another. Something slammed against a sealed door down the hall. The door bowed inward. A guard shouted, "Move! Move!" The door burst open. A creature crawled through. It was human-shaped, but wrong. Its skin looked stretched and wet. Its head was angled down like it had no eyes, but it moved straight toward living people anyway. Long claws dug into the floor as it sprinted on all fours. A licker. Rimuru did not know the word, but he understood the problem. The licker leaped. It flew right at the guards. Rimuru moved first. A clear wall formed in the air between the licker and the people. The creature hit it like a bug hitting glass. The impact made a dull boom. The licker slid down, claws screeching, mouth open in a silent scream. The guards froze. Their brains could not accept what they saw. Then their training kicked in. They raised rifles at Rimuru. "Hands up!" one yelled, even though Rimuru had no hands. Rimuru lifted his body slightly, trying to look harmless. "I'm not here to—" The guard fired. Bullets punched into Rimuru's slime body. They did not hurt. They sank in and slowed, like pebbles thrown into thick jelly. Rimuru's body rippled. The bullets fell out and clinked onto the floor. The guards stared at their guns like the guns had lied to them. Rimuru sighed, not annoyed, just tired. "Okay," he said gently. "Maybe we start with talking." The licker slammed the barrier again. It was strong, fast, and angry. It tried to climb the invisible wall, claws sliding with a harsh squeal. Rimuru focused. A small part of his body stretched forward like a ribbon. It touched the licker's arm for a split second. The creature jerked like it had been shocked. Rimuru pulled back, and a thin layer of infected tissue came with him, dissolving into his slime. Raphael. Analysis started. The organism contains engineered infection, extreme mutation potential, neurological damage. Host is beyond recovery. Rimuru's voice softened. "That's awful." The licker tried to leap again. This time, Rimuru did not just block. He opened his body like a trapdoor beneath the creature. The licker dropped into him. Its claws flailed. Its mouth snapped. Then it was gone. Rimuru's body bulged for a moment. He trembled once, then settled. A few feet away, a lab worker collapsed against the wall, shaking. Rimuru slid closer. He kept a respectful distance, so he would not scare them more. "Are you hurt?" he asked. The worker lifted a trembling hand. Blood leaked between his fingers. Rimuru paused. He remembered what Raphael said. Infection. Airborne risk. Still, the worker was alive right now, and terrified. Rimuru extended a tiny part of his slime, like a careful glove, and touched the wound. Warm light pulsed for a moment. The bleeding stopped. The worker stared, stunned, then burst into tears. One of the guards whispered, "What are you?" Before Rimuru could answer, the hallway filled with heavy footsteps. A new team stormed in, weapons raised, moving with clean, hard focus. At the front was a man with a leather jacket and a look that said he had seen too many nightmares and survived anyway. Leon S. Kennedy. His eyes locked onto Rimuru. Not the blood, not the dead liquor, not the crying scientist. The blue thing that bullets did not hurt. Leon's finger tightened near the trigger. "Don't move," Leon said, voice steady. Rimuru didn't move. He couldn't even really raise his hands to show peace, so he did the only thing he could. He spoke like a person. "I'm not your enemy," he said, "and there's something wrong with the air in here." Leon didn't answer right away. His eyes flicked to the healed wound, to the empty space where the monster had been, to the guards, who looked like they forgot how to breathe. Behind Leon, another agent shouted into a radio, "We found it. The unknown organism is inside the containment wing." A pause. Then the radio replied with a cold, clipped command. "Do not engage. Secure and capture. Use any means." Leon heard it. His jaw tightened. Rimuru heard it too. He didn't know who said it, but he understood the meaning. Someone, somewhere, had just decided he was property. And Leon, standing between Rimuru and that order, had to choose what he believed in. Chris Redfield did not like surprises. Surprises got people killed. He stood in a reinforced room that used to be a conference hall. Now it was a temporary command center. Maps covered the walls. Monitors showed satellite feeds and security cameras. A handful of agents worked quietly, eyes tired, hands fast. In the middle of the room was a thick glass barrier. On the other side sat the blue organism. It looked calm. Too calm. Chris watched it the way you watch a loaded gun on a table. It might not be pointed at you. It might not even fire by itself. But you never forget what it is. Leon stood beside Chris, arms crossed. "It saved people," Leon said. Chris didn't look away from the slime. "That doesn't make it safe," Chris said. Jill Valentine leaned on a table nearby, checking her gear. Her face was neutral, but her eyes were sharp. "Both of you are right," Jill said. "It saved people, and we don't know what it is." On the other side of the glass, the slime shifted slightly, like it was listening. A speaker system clicked. "Can you understand us?" Jill asked into the mic. "Yes," the slime answered right away. The voice was clear and polite, like someone trying to be helpful in a bad situation. "And I'm sorry about the mess." Chris narrowed his eyes. The slime added, "Also, your air is contaminated." Chris felt a cold twist in his stomach. "We know," Chris said. "We've been dealing with this for years." The slime hesitated, like it was choosing words. "Then you know it should not exist," it said. Chris didn't like how direct that was. He also didn't like that it was true. Jill tapped the mic again. "What should we call you?" The slime paused. For a moment it looked almost embarrassed. "You can call me Rimuru," it said. Chris caught the way Leon's shoulders loosened. Just a fraction. A name made it feel less like a thing, more like a person. Chris didn't let that trick work on him. Rimuru, Chris repeated, testing it. Where did you come from? Rimuru's body wobbled gently. I was somewhere else, Rimuru said. A different world. Chris watched Leon's face. Leon didn't laugh. He didn't roll his eyes. He had seen enough to know reality could break. Jill asked, How did you get here? I don't know, Rimuru answered honestly. One moment I was safe. Then I felt like the space around me pulled. And I fell. Chris thought. Convenient. But the slime's tone didn't sound like a liar. It sounded like someone who hated not having an answer. Chris folded his arms. What are you? Rimuru's voice stayed calm. I'm not human, Rimuru said. But I used to be. Jill's eyes narrowed. Used to be. Rimuru answered in simple steps, like he was explaining to someone who needed clarity. I died, Rimuru said. Then I became a slime. I gained skills. I learned how to protect others. I led people. I built a home. Chris glanced at Jill. A home. Led people. That sounded like a story someone would tell to seem harmless. Or it sounded like the truth from someone who didn't understand this world's rules yet. Leon leaned toward the mic. You built a home for who? Rimuru's voice warmed. Many kinds of people, Rimuru said. Some were scared of each other. Some were enemies. But they wanted to live. So we made rules. We talked. We worked. Chris almost laughed. Rules. Talk. Work. In this world, people in lab coats made nightmares and called it progress. In this world, rules were just things powerful people used to trap weaker people. Rimuru continued, This place feels different. It feels like humans fight each other even when monsters are right in front of them. Nobody answered that, because it landed too close to the truth. Chris keyed a command and brought up scans on a nearby monitor. Thermal, chemical, radiation, biological. The readings were strange. It's not a normal organism, one tech muttered. It's not even reading like a mammal. Is it infected? Chris asked. The tech shook his head. No, but it holds things. Like it's carrying samples inside itself. Chris's eyes snapped back to the slime, carrying samples. A walking biohazard vault. Rimuru spoke again, as if he sensed the shift. I absorbed a monster in the lab, Rimuru said. It was suffering. It was made wrong. Chris's jaw clenched. You absorbed it? Yes, Rimuru said. So it could not hurt anyone. Jill asked, Is it still inside you? Rimuru didn't dodge it. Yes, Rimuru said, but it can't escape. Chris felt a surge of anger he didn't fully trust. You expect us to take your word for that? Rimuru went quiet. Then he said, very softly, No, I don't. That surprised Chris more than any miracle barrier. Rimuru continued, If you want rules, we can make rules. Leon blinked. Rules. Yes, Rimuru said, like this was normal. We can agree on what I do and don't do. We can write it. You can watch. I don't like misunderstandings. Jill's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. Chris did not smile. He pictured a boardroom full of suits. He pictured the order Leon heard over the radio. Capture. Any means. People like that did not want rules with Rimuru. They wanted chains. Chris stepped away from the glass and spoke low to Leon and Jill. We keep him contained, Chris said. We test him. We figure out what he can do. And we plan for the worst. Leon's eyes hardened. We also stop whoever ordered capture. Chris nodded once. That too. On another monitor, a secure message popped up. It came from a corporate channel masked behind government clearance. A neat logo. A friendly tone. We can help you secure the anomaly. We have facilities. We have scientists. We can protect the world. Chris read between the lines without effort. They wanted Rimuru. Jill read it over Chris's shoulder and exhaled through her nose. "Here we go," Leon muttered. "They always show up fast." Chris deleted the message and flagged it. "We don't hand him over," Chris said. "Not until we know what game they're playing." Across the glass, Rimuru shifted again. "Is something wrong?" Rimuru asked. Chris stared at him. If Rimuru was truly this strong, then even a small mistake could turn into a disaster. Chris pressed the mic. "Rimuru, can you be hurt?" Rimuru paused, like he was thinking carefully. "Yes," Rimuru said, "but not easily." Chris asked, "Can you hurt us?" Rimuru answered without pride, without threat. "Yes," Rimuru said, "easily." The room went still. Rimuru added quickly, "But I don't want to." Chris watched Rimuru's body, no twitch. No anger, no lie he could see. Just calm honesty. That was almost worse, because calm honesty in a monster could still get people killed if it decided you were in the way. Chris lowered his voice. "Then prove it." Rimuru's tone stayed gentle. "How?" Chris stared at him for a long beat. Then he said, "Help us stop the next outbreak. On our terms. Under our eyes. No secrets." Rimuru answered like he had been waiting to be useful. "Okay," Rimuru said. "We should have a meeting first." Leon slowly turned his head toward Chris. "A meeting?" Rimuru sounded serious. "Yes," Rimuru said. "Short, clear, roles. You're the leader. Jill is security. Leon is contact and support. I'll be containment." Jill raised an eyebrow. "Containment." Rimuru said it like it was the most normal job in the world. "Yes," Rimuru replied. "This world needs containment." Leon let out a small breath that almost sounded like a laugh. Chris did not laugh, but for the first time since the alarm, Chris felt something that wasn't just anger. It was a thin, cautious thread of hope. Then the lights flickered. Every monitor stuttered. A new alert flashed in bold letters across the command screen. Incident reported. Hospital district. Multiple casualties. Unknown mutation. Chris's stomach tightened. Rimuru's voice came through the speaker, calm but sharp. "That's soon," Rimuru said. "Someone is moving fast." Ada Wong watched the command center from a place nobody would think to check. A maintenance walkway. A shadowed corner behind vents. A blind spot between cameras. She listened to every word. A slime that talked like a leader. A slime that could take bullets like rain. A slime that said, "Meeting in the middle of a biohazard crisis." Ada's lips curved slightly. This wasn't just a weapon. This was a new rule. And in Ada's world, new rules meant opportunities. Her phone buzzed once. A message, short and clean. "Confirm ID." Ada typed with one hand, eyes still on the room. "Not confirmed." Calls itself Rimuru. "Not human." "High threat, higher value." A second message arrived. "Can you get a sample?" Ada's smile faded. "Of course that's the first question," she whispered. She watched Chris's face harden as he read the hospital alert. She watched Leon's focus sharpen. She watched Jill pull her gloves on. Ada made a decision. Not about loyalty. She didn't do loyalty. About timing. If she moved too early, she died. If she moved too late, she lost the prize. Ada slipped away like smoke, already planning her route toward the hospital district. The hospital district looked like it had been punched in the chest. Sirens screamed from every direction. Police cars blocked streets. People ran in the open like they had no idea where safety could be. Chris stood behind a ruined ambulance door, watching the chaos through a crack. "Where's the source?" he demanded into the radio. A panicked voice answered. "Multiple floors. We have infected spreading through stairwells. Something is changing them fast." Jill's eyes scanned the windows. Too fast for normal exposure. Leon crouched beside Chris, gun ready. "This feels planned." Chris did not answer, because he agreed. Then the air shifted. Not wind, not heat. Pressure. Chris turned. A blue shape floated above the street like a drifting balloon. Rimuru. He had insisted on coming. Chris had insisted on watching him every second. Rimuru's voice sounded in Chris's ear through a small comm device they'd given him. The text said it was for communication. Chris knew it was also a leash. "People are trapped," Rimuru said. "I can hear them." Chris's eyes narrowed. "You can hear them through concrete?" "Yes," Rimuru said, like that was normal. "Their hearts are loud," Leon whispered. "That's insane." Rimuru lowered closer to the street. His tone stayed focused. "Before I enter," Rimuru said, "we should set rules." Chris almost choked. "Now?" Rimuru sounded serious. "Yes. If you want control, we agree on it. Clear rules prevent fear." Jill muttered. "He's really doing the meeting thing." Leon said quietly, "It's kind of helping." Chris hated that Leon might be right. Chris spoke fast. "Rule 1. Civilians first." Rimuru replied instantly. "Agreed." Chris. "Rule 2. No spreading. No releasing anything." Rimuru. "Agreed." Chris. "Rule 3. You don't absorb living humans." Rimuru paused for the first time. Not offended, just careful. "I won't," Rimuru said, "unless a human asks me to save them, and there is no other way." Chris's grip tightened on his rifle. "We'll talk about that later." Rimuru didn't argue. "Okay." Jill pointed to the hospital entrance. "Go." Rimuru moved. He did not crash through walls. He did not show off. He slid forward like a calm tide. At the entrance, infected surged out. Not slow zombies. Fast ones. Skin mottled. Eyes wild. Mouths foaming. They ran like animals. Leon fired controlled shots. 2 went down. 1 kept coming even with a broken knee. Chris fired and hit the head. It dropped. Then the infected behind it stepped on its body without caring. Rimuru formed a wide, clear wall across the entrance, sealing it like a lid. The infected smashed into it and bounced back. Some clawed at it. Some screamed. Rimuru's voice stayed steady. "This is not normal infection," Chris snapped. "We know." Rimuru didn't get angry. "This is faster than your normal." Jill moved along the side door and kicked it open. "Stairwell." Leon and Chris followed. Their boots pounded up steps, slick with blood. The smell hit them on the 3rd floor. It wasn't just death. It was chemicals, rot, and something sharp like burned plastic. A nurse lay against the wall, shaking. Her eyes were still human. Her hands were not. Her fingers had started to fuse into claw-like shapes. Leon lowered his gun, voice gentle. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" The nurse sobbed. "It hurts. Please." Chris looked at her and felt his throat tighten. He had seen this too many times. Then Rimuru slid into the stairwell behind them. His slime body brightened faintly. "I can slow it," Rimuru said. Chris's eyes snapped to him. "Can you cure it?" Rimuru hesitated. That was all Chris needed to hear. Rimuru answered carefully. "I can try, but it's designed to fight cures." Leon looked up at the ceiling as something above them slammed into a vent. Jill whispered, "We're not alone." A scream echoed down the hall. Not a human scream. Something deeper. Something that sounded like it had a throat full of wet metal. The stairwell door on the 5th floor exploded inward. A mass of flesh and armor crashed through. It was tall, heavy, and shaped like a man in a thick coat. Except it wasn't a coat. It was grown tissue. Layered like plates. Its right arm was huge, swollen with muscle and bone spikes. Its left arm ended in a whip-like tendon that snapped through the air. And its face kept changing. The skin shifted like it couldn't decide what it wanted to be. Rimuru's voice lowered. That one is. Watching us. Chris raised his gun. What the hell is that? Leon's eyes narrowed. It's not a tyrant. Not exactly. Jill's jaw tightened. It's something new. The creature stepped forward. Then it spoke. Not words, not language. But it made a sound that copied a human voice, like a broken recording. Uru. Chris felt cold shoot down his spine. It knew the name. Rimuru's body tensed. How? Raphael. Hypothesis. The organism is engineered to recognize your signal pattern. It is designed to adapt against your abilities. Chris's mind raced. A trap. Someone had already seen Rimuru, already planned for him. The creature lunged. It moved faster than something that big should move. It slammed into Rimuru like a truck. Rimuru's slime body splashed against the wall, then pulled back together instantly. The creature whipped its tendon arm. The tendon cracked like a whip and wrapped around Rimuru, squeezing. Rimuru didn't scream. He didn't panic. He simply went still for half a second. Then his body split. A second Rimuru formed behind the creature like a drop of water becoming a person. Chris's eyes widened. He duplicated. The first Rimuru let the tendon hold him like bait. The second, Rimuru reached out and touched the creature's back. Absorption. The creature's flesh hissed like it was burning, but instead of dissolving, the flesh hardened. A thin layer of shiny black tissue formed. Like a shield. Rimuru pulled back quickly. He sounded surprised, not scared. It resists, Rimuru said. The creature slammed Rimuru into the wall again, trying to smear him. Rimuru slid down, then reformed. Jill fired at the creature's head. The bullets hit. The flesh moved to protect the brain like it was learning. Leon shouted, "It's reacting!" Chris aimed for joints. He fired into knees and elbows. The creature staggered. Then its legs thickened, reinforcing. Chris swore under his breath. "It's adapting to everything." Rimuru hovered up, away from the creature's arm. He spoke quickly into the comm. "Chris, Jill, Leon, move civilians down and out. I will hold it." Chris snapped, "You don't give orders." Rimuru didn't argue. "Then consider it a suggestion." Leon grabbed Chris's shoulder. "He's right. We can't fight that thing the normal way." Chris hated it, but he nodded once. "Jill, get survivors out," Chris ordered. "Leon, with her." Jill didn't hesitate. "Move." Leon helped the shaking nurse stand. He guided her toward the stairs. Chris stayed. He watched Rimuru face the creature alone. The creature roared and charged again. Rimuru didn't dodge like a human. He flowed. He turned into a wave and slid across the floor, passing under the creature's legs. Then he popped up behind it and formed a thick wall to block its retreat. The creature spun, trying to smash through. Rimuru raised another barrier in front. Now the creature was boxed in a hallway, like an animal in a cage. It slammed the barrier once, twice. On the third hit, the barrier cracked. Chris's eyes widened. "It can break that?" Rimuru's tone tightened. "It has a core. A central part. It's pushing power into its strikes." Raphael, core location estimated. Behind sternum. Multiple decoy organs detected. Recommend separation strategy. Rimuru spoke out loud, almost like he was thinking with a friend. "Okay," Rimuru said. "We don't hit it. We take it apart." The creature lunged again. Rimuru split into 4 bodies. 4 Rimurus, each moving in a different direction. One went high, sticking to the ceiling. One slid low along the floor. One stayed in front. One moved behind. The creature hesitated. It didn't understand which one to kill first. That moment was all Rimuru needed. The Rimuru on the ceiling dropped like a net. A curtain of slime wrapped over the creature's head and shoulders, blocking its view. The creature thrashed, roaring. Its tendon arm snapped wildly, trying to slice free. The floor Rimuru surged up and swallowed the creature's legs, pinning it in place. The front Rimuru formed a thick spike of hardened slime and drove it into the creature's chest. Not to kill, to open a path. The creature screamed and tried to harden its flesh again. But Rimuru's fourth body was already inside the wound, flowing like water into a pipe. Chris watched, breath held. This wasn't fighting like a soldier. This was fighting like an entire system. Rimuru's voice came out calm, even as he worked. "Found it," Rimuru said. A pulse of dark energy surged from inside the creature's chest. The creature's body inflated, muscle swelling like it was about to explode. Raphael. Warning. Self-destruction reaction detected. Airborne release imminent. Chris's eyes snapped wide. "Rimuru," he shouted. "It's going to blow!" Rimuru answered instantly. "I know." And then Rimuru did something that made Chris forget to breathe. He expanded. Not a little. Not like a blob getting bigger. Rimuru became a huge blue mass that filled the entire hallway, sealing every crack, every vent, every doorway like living concrete. The creature's swollen body detonated inside him. A wet shockwave hit the walls. The building shook. Chris braced himself, but nothing came out. No mist, no spores, no gas. Rimuru held it all. For 3 full seconds, the hallway was silent except for distant alarms. Then Rimuru shrank back down. He reformed into a smaller shape, smooth and calm again. Chris stared at him like he was looking at a natural disaster that chose to be kind. Rimuru's voice sounded a little strained now, but still controlled. "I contained it," Rimuru said. "But someone wanted it to spread." Chris's mouth was dry. "That thing was made for you." Rimuru paused. "Yes," Rimuru said quietly. "It spoke my name." Chris clenched his jaw. Leon's voice crackled in the calm. "We have survivors moving. But Chris, look outside." Chris ran to a broken window and looked down at the street. People were filming. Not just civilians. News drones, helicopters, phones. They had seen barriers. They had seen the infected stopped at the entrance. They had seen a blue creature float above the chaos like a calm god. Chris felt his stomach sink. This was no longer a hidden mission. This was a public event. Rimuru drifted beside him and looked down too. In the street below, someone pointed up at Rimuru and screamed, half fear, half awe. Chris heard distant sirens, not just for the infected, for arriving forces, for control, for capture. Rimuru's voice was low. "This world moves fast when it wants a weapon." Chris didn't answer, because he knew what came next. Boards, orders, suits, threats, and someone, somewhere, watching the hospital footage, would already be planning the next move. Not to beat Rimuru in a fair fight, but to trap him in a choice. Rimuru turned slightly toward Chris. "Chris," he said, using the name like they were already in the same room of a meeting. "If people come to take me, will you let them?" Chris stared at him. He didn't trust Rimuru, not fully. But he trusted the world even less. Chris's voice came out rough. "Not until I know what they're going to do to you." Rimuru's tone softened, almost grateful. "Okay," Rimuru said. "Then we need better rules." Outside, the crowd grew. Inside, the air still carried fear. And far away, behind layers of money and walls, someone smiled at a screen full of hospital footage and whispered, very pleased, "Now the world has seen him." And the next monster would be smarter. Chris Redfield had been in war zones. He had been in cities that burned. He had seen crowds panic. But he hated cameras more than almost anything. Because cameras did not just watch. Cameras turned fear into a story. And stories spread faster than any virus. The hospital street below was packed now. Police lines shook under pressure. People held phones high, arms trembling from excitement and terror. News vans pushed in. Drones hovered like insects. And above all of it, there was one clear shape in every frame. A blue creature that had stopped an outbreak in minutes. Chris stepped away from the broken window and spoke into his radio. "Get evac buses moving. Tight perimeter. No civilians inside." A voice answered, strained. "We're trying. Everyone wants in. They're shouting, 'Show us the cure.'" Chris shut his eyes for a second. The cure. That word always poisoned everything. Rimuru hovered near the stairwell, quiet. His body looked smooth again, as if nothing had happened. But Chris could feel it. Not with a sensor, with instinct. Rimuru was holding back, holding in the thing he had contained, holding in the pressure of a whole world staring at him. Leon came up the stairs with Jill behind him. Jill's face was hard in the way it got when she smelled manipulation. Leon lowered his voice. "We need to move him out. Now." Chris nodded. No arguments. Rimuru turned toward them, calm but alert. "I can leave without being seen." Chris stared at him. "You could have done that earlier." Rimuru didn't look offended. He looked honest. "I didn't know you wanted that," Rimuru said. "You didn't make it a rule." Jill let out a short breath. He really does think like that. Chris hated it because part of him understood. If you wanted safety, you made rules. In this world, rules were usually lies. Chris spoke like a hammer. "New rule. We don't let the world see you until we understand what that does." Rimuru nodded once. "Okay." He didn't argue. He didn't demand freedom. He didn't ask for praise. That made Chris more uneasy, not less. They moved through back halls, through stairwells that smelled like smoke and blood, through a service tunnel where fluorescent lights flickered and water dripped from a broken pipe. Rimuru flowed beside them like a silent escort. When they passed wounded survivors, Rimuru slowed. His body tilted slightly toward them, like he wanted to help. Chris felt it like pressure on his ribs. He wanted Rimuru to help too. He also knew what happened when people found something that could fix their pain. They grabbed it. They used it. They broke it. By the time they reached the armored vehicle bay, a line of black vans was already waiting. Chris's stomach tightened. He recognized the shape and the clean, unmarked plates. Corporate transport. The kind that moved assets, not people. Jill saw it too. Her hand went to her pistol. Leon's jaw clenched. "They're here already." Chris spoke into his radio again. "Who cleared those vehicles?" Silence. Then a careful voice. "It wasn't us." Chris's eyes narrowed. "Then block them." The vehicle bay door began to close. The vans accelerated. Chris stepped forward, rifle up. Then a calm voice called from the lead van, amplified through a speaker. "Captain Redfield, please stand down." Chris's teeth ground. A man stepped out. He wore a dark suit that looked too expensive for a place that smelled like death. His hair was neat. His smile was practiced. He held his hands open like he had nothing to hide. That was the first lie. "Who are you?" Chris demanded. The man nodded politely at Jill and Leon too, like he was greeting people at a party. "My name is Director Kessler," he said. "I represent a biosecurity partnership tasked with global containment." Jill's eyes narrowed. "That's vague." Kessler smiled wider. "It needs to be." Chris stepped to the side, putting his body between Kessler and the service tunnel where Rimuru hovered. "We have containment," Chris said. "Get out of my way." Kessler's gaze flicked, just once, toward the tunnel. He couldn't see Rimuru directly from this angle, but he knew. "Captain," Kessler said softly, "you just witnessed an entity that can stop outbreaks. The world cannot afford private ownership of that." Chris barked a laugh with no humor. "Private ownership. That's exactly what you mean. Kessler's smile didn't break. We mean oversight, safety, proper research, a controlled environment. Leon stepped forward. He's not a sample. He's a person. Kessler tilted his head. Is he? You've known him for an hour. Jill's voice cut in, sharp. And you've known him for less. Kessler's eyes turned to Jill. The smile stayed. The temperature dropped. We have authority, he said. Transfer the organism. Chris felt rage rise, hot and clean. Rimuru's voice sounded in Chris's ear through the comm. Quiet, not scared. Chris, Rimuru said. You don't have to fight for me. Chris answered without looking back. Yes, I do. Kessler raised a hand, as if he was calming a child. We don't want violence, he said. We want cooperation. Let our team. Rimuru floated out of the tunnel, visible now. The whole bay froze. Even Kessler's smile twitched. Rimuru's voice carried, clear and polite. Hello, Rimuru said. Do you want a meeting? Leon made a sound that was half laugh, half shock. Jill muttered, No way. Chris stared at Rimuru like he wanted to shout, and also wanted to thank him. Kessler recovered quickly. He turned the smile back on like a switch. Rimuru, Kessler said, as if they were old friends. We can provide you with protection, food, shelter, resources, a place where you can help the most people. Rimuru's body tilted. I don't eat like humans, but thank you. Kessler's eyes flicked, annoyed for half a second, then smooth again. A place where you can be safe, Kessler corrected. Rimuru's tone stayed gentle. I'm safe. Kessler's smile tightened. Not from the world. That line hit hard because it was true. Chris watched Rimuru process it. The slime didn't flinch, but he went quiet. Then Rimuru said, If your goal is to help people, then we can share information. But I won't be locked away. Kessler's expression stayed calm. His words sharpened. You don't understand, he said. You are now a global matter. Rimuru's voice stayed soft. I understand. That's why rules matter. Kessler's smile returned like a blade. Then here is the first rule, Kessler said. You belong to... Chris stepped forward so fast, he almost hit Kessler with his shoulder. No, Chris said. He doesn't belong to anyone. Kessler's eyes flicked to Chris's rifle. Then to Jill's stance. Then to Leon's face. He measured them like numbers. He decided violence here would look bad on camera, because cameras were everywhere now. So Kessler did what people like him always did when a direct grab failed. He retreated while planting a hook. Captain Redfield, he said calmly, you will not be able to hide him. You will not be able to control the panic, and you will not be able to stop the requests. He turned to Rimuru, voice smooth again. When the world calls you a monster, Kessler said, remember, we offered you a home. He stepped back into the van. The vans rolled out like nothing had happened. Chris watched them go, heart pounding. He didn't trust Kessler's calm. It meant he already had a second plan. Rimuru hovered close to Chris. I don't like him, Rimuru said simply. Chris snorted. Good. Jill looked at the bay entrance where daylight spilled in. We need to disappear, she said. Now. Leon's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen and swore. It's already online, Leon said. Chris took the phone. A shaky video showed the hospital entrance. It showed infected, hitting a clear wall and falling back. It showed a blue shape above the street. It showed a hallway shaking as if something exploded. Then it showed Rimuru near the broken window, looking down at the crowd. The caption read, Blue Angel cures outbreak. Chris's jaw tightened until it hurt. That night, they moved Rimuru to a secure BSAA facility outside the city. It was a gray building that looked like a warehouse, with hidden steel in the walls and too many cameras. Inside, it felt like a bunker. Chris stood in the command room while techs replayed footage and tracked chatter across networks. Jill leaned over a monitor. "They're calling him everything." Leon read headlines out loud because sometimes humor was the only way to keep from screaming. The Slime Savior, the Blue Devil, the Cure Creature. Leon looked up. Cure Creature? Jill actually smiled at that one. Chris didn't. He walked into the reinforced interview room, where Rimuru waited behind another thick glass barrier. Rimuru looked the same. Calm. Polite. Patient. Chris hated how much he respected that. Chris pressed the calm button. "We need to talk." Rimuru's voice came back right away. "Yes." Chris stared at him. "That video is everywhere. People will come for you. Some will come to worship you. Some will come to cut you open." Rimuru went quiet for a moment. Then he said, "In my world, people feared what they didn't understand too." Chris said, "This world doesn't stop at fear." Rimuru's tone shifted, still soft, but more serious. "I saw the lab," Rimuru said. "They created suffering on purpose." Chris's chest tightened. Rimuru continued, "If this world keeps doing that, then more people will die." "Many." Chris leaned closer to the glass, voice low. "And if you try to fix everything, you become the center of every war." Rimuru's body tilted slightly. "I can handle fights." Chris shook his head. "It's not about fights." He pointed at the monitors outside, visible through the room's window. "It's politics," Chris said. "Leverage, hostages, lies, people you can't punch." Rimuru's voice softened. "I've dealt with politics." Chris paused. That was the first time he had felt the gap between worlds. In Rimuru's world, politics was still dangerous, but it lived under rules, under honor sometimes, under leaders who had to stand in front of their people. Here, politics hid in shadows and smiled while it stabbed. Chris said, "This world will test you in ways you won't expect." Rimuru answered, "Then tell me what you expect." Chris didn't like the question, because the honest answer was, he expected Rimuru to break. Not because he was weak, because nobody could carry this much fear without getting crushed. Jill entered quietly. Arms folded. Leon followed. Leon spoke first, trying to keep things human. "Rimuru," Leon said, "people are asking if you can cure infection. Like, all infection." Rimuru looked at Leon. "Some can be healed. Some can't. Some aren't illness anymore. They're weapons." Jill asked, "What about the nurse, the one you saw earlier?" Rimuru hesitated. Chris saw it and leaned in. "Tell us." Rimuru's voice came out steady, but there was a weight in it now. "I can slow her mutation," Rimuru said. "I can remove parts of the infection. But this virus is built to change. It fights back. If I force a full change too fast, I might harm her." Leon's shoulders sagged. "So, it's not magic." Rimuru's tone stayed calm. "It is magic. But this world's infection is also very smart." Chris stared at Rimuru. For the first time, he felt something that looked like a boundary, a limit. Not a power limit, a moral limit. Rimuru could do anything to that nurse if he wanted. He could absorb her whole body and rebuild it, probably. But he didn't want to take that choice away from her. Chris said, "If you can cure people, the world will demand you do it." Rimuru answered, "Then we make a process." Jill blinked. "A process?" Rimuru sounded almost relieved. "Yes. Consent. Explanation. Clear steps. No forced treatments. A safe place where people can choose." Leon muttered, "He's really going to build a system." Chris rubbed his forehead. The running gag would have been funny if it wasn't also the only sane idea anyone had offered in years. Chris lowered his voice. You need to understand something. If you build a safe place, they will try to take it. Rimuru said. Then we defend it. Chris's eyes hardened. And if they take someone you care about and tell you to surrender? Rimuru went still. The room felt colder. Rimuru's voice turned quiet. Then I would feel angry. Chris held his stare. And what happens to the world when you feel angry? Rimuru didn't answer right away. When he did, it was honest. I don't know, Rimuru said. That answer hit Chris harder than any threat, because it was the truth. A being that powerful, admitting he didn't know what he would do in his worst moment. Chris looked at Jill and Leon. Jill's eyes said the same thing Chris felt. This was the real danger. Not Rimuru's strength, Rimuru's heart. Because someone could use it. Leon broke the silence with a question that sounded small but wasn't. Rimuru, Leon said. What do you want? Rimuru's body shifted gently, like he was trying to find the right shape for the words. I want people to stop suffering, Rimuru said. And I want a place where nobody is used like a tool. Chris felt the irony like a punch. This world was built on tools, on turning life into equipment. Jill watched Rimuru for a long second. If we help you build that place, do you promise you won't try to control the world? Rimuru answered quickly. I don't want to control it. I want it to stop hurting itself, Chris muttered. Same thing to some people. A door opened behind them. A tech stepped in, face pale. Captain, the tech said, we have government contact requests. Multiple. And a corporate request. Chris already knew which one. He walked out to the command room. Screens showed live news, talking heads, panic maps, clips of the blue shape, and then another clip. Not from the hospital, from a different angle, from inside the facility bay. Chris felt his blood go cold. They were being watched. Chris clicked open the metadata. The footage source was unknown. The upload was fresh. The caption said, "The government is hiding the cure." Chris slammed his hand on the desk. Jill came up behind him. "Someone wants riots," Leon said quietly, "or wants pressure." Chris didn't answer, because he knew the next move already. If you couldn't take the asset in the dark, you made the world demand it in the light. The next morning, the first official order arrived. Transfer Rimuru to authorized containment. Chris crumpled the paper and threw it in the trash. Then the second order arrived, bigger and louder. Threats of arrest, threats of funding cuts, threats of making BSAA the villain. Leon stared at the screen and whispered, "They're not even trying to hide it." Jill said, "They're panicking." Chris shook his head. "No, panic looks messy. This looks planned." In a different place, behind glass walls and quiet air, Director Kessler sat in a clean office. He watched the hospital footage again, frame by frame. He didn't smile this time. He studied. He paused on the moment Rimuru expanded to seal the hallway. He paused on the moment the creature tried to self-destruct. He paused on the moment Rimuru contained it all. Kessler's assistant spoke softly. "We cannot overpower it." Kessler's eyes stayed on the screen. "Of course we can't." He tapped his finger once on the desk. "We don't fight it," Kessler said. "We aim it." The assistant hesitated. "How?" Kessler's smile returned, thin and satisfied. "You make it choose," Kessler said, "and you make every choice cost him something." In a darker place, deeper than any boardroom, another man watched too. He didn't need assistance. He didn't need approval. He sat in shadow with a screen glow on his face. His eyes were calm, sharp, and cruel in a quiet way. Albert Wesker watched Rimuru like he was watching a new kind of storm. He listened to Rimuru's voice. He watched Rimuru's restraint. He watched the way Rimuru moved like a system, not a fighter. Then Wesker spoke, low and almost amused. "He's a king," Wesker said. A scientist near him swallowed. "Sir?" Wesker didn't look away from the screen. "A creature like that doesn't just survive," Wesker said. "It organizes. It builds. It protects. It makes rules." He finally smiled. "Rules are handles," Wesker said. "And handles are how you move something stronger than you." He leaned forward. "We will not challenge his body," Wesker said. "We will challenge his values." The scientist asked, voice small. "With what?" Wesker's smile widened just a fraction. "With humans," he said. Back at the BSAA facility, Rimuru sat alone in his glass room. He didn't sleep. He didn't need to. But he did feel the weight of the world pressing in. He listened through walls. He listened to distant voices on radios. He listened to the shaky heartbeats of survivors. They had moved into nearby safe zones. Fear was loud. Greed was louder. Raphael spoke inside him, calm and constant. Raphael. External attention increasing. Probability of attempted capture. High. Probability of public unrest. High. Rimuru's inner voice was quiet. Rimuru. This world doesn't trust kindness. Raphael. Correct. Recommend proactive structure. Rimuru almost smiled. Even his cold, logical partner was basically saying the same thing he always said. Make a system. Make rules. Make a safe home. A knock came at the reinforced door. Leon stepped in with a tablet. His face looked tired. "Rimuru," Leon said. "You should see this." Rimuru floated closer to the glass. "Is it bad?" Leon hesitated. "It's targeted." He showed Rimuru the screen. A live feed. A masked video call. The image was grainy. The voice distorted. A person sat in a chair under a harsh light. Their arms were strapped down. They looked like a teenager. Eyes wide. Lips cracked. Skin spotted with early infection. They were alive and terrified. The voice said, "We know you can help. We know you care." The camera zoomed in on the teen's face. The teen whispered, "Please." "I don't want to turn." Leon's voice came tight. We traced the signal. It bounced through a dozen relays. But the last ping points to an old facility site. Chris entered behind Leon. His face was stone. "They want you to go," Chris said. Rimuru's body went still. "What is the facility?" Rimuru asked. Jill stepped in too. "A place connected to the newest strain. If there are living test subjects, it's a trap." Rimuru stared at the screen again. The teen's chest rose and fell fast. Rimuru's voice came out very soft. "They're alive." Chris slammed a fist into the wall. "That's why it works." Rimuru turned slightly toward Chris. "I can save them." Chris stared back. "And they can use them to control you." Rimuru's tone stayed calm, but there was something new in it now. A steady heat. "Then I won't let them," Rimuru said. Leon swallowed. "Chris, we can't just ignore it." Chris exhaled hard. He looked at Jill. Jill's eyes said the same thing. If they ignored it, someone died. If they went, someone might get captured. Chris's voice came low and harsh. "We do it our way. We go in prepared." Rimuru answered. "They said come alone." Chris's eyes sharpened. "Then we don't play their game." Rimuru's voice stayed gentle. "If I go with you, they might kill the hostages." Jill's jaw clenched. "If you go alone, they might trap you." Rimuru paused. Then he said something that made Leon blink. "I can go alone," Rimuru said, "and still not be alone." Chris narrowed his eyes. "What does that mean?" Rimuru's body rippled. A second Rimuru formed beside him, then a third, then a fourth. Each one looked the same. Each one's voice was the same. I can split, Rimuru said. One of me can be seen. The others can watch. Quietly. Chris stared. Leon whispered, "That's actually smart." Jill muttered, "It's also terrifying." Rimuru looked from face to face. "I won't let people die to protect my freedom," Rimuru said. "But I also won't let my freedom become a weapon for them." Chris's throat tightened. He hated how reasonable that was. He nodded once. "Fine," Chris said. "You go in. We shadow you. No hero moves without a plan." Rimuru's voice softened again. "Okay," Rimuru said. "Then we need a meeting." Chris groaned. Jill actually smiled. Leon shook his head like he couldn't believe his life. But they did the meeting anyway. Because the world had finally presented them with a problem they could not solve with bullets. And because somewhere in the dark, someone had just proven they could pull Rimuru by the heart. The next move would not be about strength, it would be about choice, and it would be personal. The safe zone started as a row of empty buildings near the edge of town. Windows boarded, doors broken, old posters peeling off walls. It looked like every place Chris had ever cleared. Dead. Then Rimuru changed it. He didn't rebuild it into a shiny palace. He just made it usable. He sealed cracks so infected air couldn't slip in. He reinforced doors with clear barriers that could open for approved people and close for danger. He created clean water in large containers. He made simple lights that stayed on even when the power grid failed. Most importantly, he made a board. A real board. Leon watched him stick it to a wall with a blob of slime-like glue. At the top, Rimuru wrote in big, neat letters, "Safe house rules." Below that, there were simple lines. 1. No weapons inside sleeping rooms. 2. If you are injured, report it. 3. Nobody is forced to take treatment. 4. If you feel sick, tell us early. 5. No lies about bites. We will help. Leon stared. "You really did it." Rimuru's voice sounded proud, like a kid showing homework. "Yes," Rimuru said. "Rules reduce fear." Jill crossed her arms, watching survivors file in. Some stared at Rimuru like he was an angel. Some stared at him like he was a demon. Chris watched all of them and felt the familiar weight of leadership settle deeper. Because now they weren't just fighting monsters. They were building something. And building something in this world was like painting a target on your back. Rimuru moved through the safe house with calm purpose. He made rolls without making anyone feel small. He asked a retired nurse to run the medical corner. He asked a strong, steady father to help with door checks. He asked a shy teenage boy who liked computers to help track supplies. Leon watched the way Rimuru did it. No shouting, no threats. Just respect. And it worked. For a moment, the safe house felt like a real place. Like the world could still be normal inside four walls. Then Chris got the call. The hostage video location. A ping, a lead, a facility in the woods, tied to old umbrella roots. Chris called everyone in. They stood around a table with a map taped down. Rimuru hovered over it, reading like he didn't need light. Chris pointed. "Here, one road in, one road out. That's a trap." Jill tapped a pen against the table. "Old sites always have hidden entrances." Leon asked. "What about cameras?" Chris answered. "Assume everything sees us." Rimuru listened, then spoke calmly. "I will be the visible one," Rimuru said. "The others will scout." He split again. 2, 3, 4 bodies. They moved like quiet drops, slipping under doors and through cracks. Leon swallowed. "How far can they go?" Rimuru answered. "Far enough." Chris didn't love it, but he loved the idea of walking into a trap, blind, even less. They moved at night. A convoy of 2 vehicles, lights off, engines low. The forest road was narrow. Trees leaned in like they were watching. The air smelled wet and cold. Leon kept his hand near his holster the whole time. Jill watched the woods for movement. Chris watched the mirrors. Rimuru floated in the back like a calm blue lantern. Half an hour in, Rimuru spoke softly. "Someone is there," Rimuru said. Chris's grip tightened. "Where?" Rimuru answered. "Ahead. Off the road. Human heartbeat. Very still." Jill raised her rifle. "Sniper!" Leon whispered. "How can you tell?" Rimuru said. "Their fear is loud." Chris raised a fist, and the convoy stopped. Jill slipped out first, quiet as smoke. Leon followed. Chris stayed near Rimuru, watching the tree line. A shot cracked. Not at them. At the front tire. The vehicle hissed and slumped. Chris swore. Then the woods lit up with muzzle flashes. Bullets tore through metal. Glass exploded. Leon rolled behind a tree. Jill returned fire, controlled and clean. Chris dragged the driver down, checking for blood. Rimuru moved. A clear dome formed over the vehicles, catching bullets like rain. The gunfire stopped for half a second, because the attackers couldn't believe their shots were bouncing off invisible air. Then someone shouted, "Grenade!" A small black object flew and hit the dome. It exploded. Fire blossomed. The dome held. Rimuru's voice stayed calm. "They are trying to test my barrier." Chris gritted his teeth. "Keep it up." Rimuru's body shifted. The dome thickened. Then Rimuru extended a thin strand of slime through the trees like a quiet hand. A scream sounded from the dark. The strand snapped back. Rimuru's voice stayed even. "One attacker is sleeping now." Leon blinked. "Sleeping?" Rimuru said. "Unconscious. I didn't harm him." Jill's eyes flicked toward Rimuru. "You could have killed them." Rimuru answered simply, "Yes." That was all. And that yes carried a message. He was choosing restraint, on purpose. Chris used the opening. "Move!" They abandoned the damaged vehicle and pushed forward on foot. Rimuru's barrier moved with them like a shield. The facility appeared through the trees like a dead animal. Concrete, rusted steel, old security lights that still worked. A symbol on the gate had been scraped away, but Chris could still feel umbrella in the shape of the place. Jill whispered, "I hate these sights." Leon muttered, "Yeah, same." Rimuru floated toward the gate. "The hostages are inside," Chris said. "How many?" Rimuru paused. "More than one. At least 12. Maybe more." Leon's face tightened. 12. Chris's mind raced. This wasn't just bait. This was inventory. They moved to the side entrance Jill had found on old maps, a hidden service hatch behind vines. Chris pried it open. The air inside smelled like antiseptic and mold. Rimuru's voice dropped. "There is something else, too," Chris whispered. "What?" Rimuru answered. "A mind, not human. It is spread out." They entered. The hallways were narrow, lit by emergency strips. Old bloodstains marked corners. Scratches lined doors. Leon's flashlight beam caught a camera lens. Chris shot it out. Another lens turned from the ceiling. Jill shot that one. Then a speaker crackled. A voice poured out, distorted and amused. "Welcome," the voice said. "You came." Chris's blood went cold. He didn't recognize the voice, but he recognized the tone. Control. Rimuru hovered forward. "Where are they?" The voice laughed softly. "Straight ahead," it said. "If you can keep them alive." The floor dropped. Not literally. A panel slid open beneath them. Leon fell, grabbing the edge at the last second. Jill caught his arm. Chris grabbed Jill's belt. Rimuru didn't fall. He floated. He extended his slime like a rope and pulled them up in one smooth motion. Leon breathed hard. Trap floor. Chris glared at the dark hole. "They're hurting us." Rimuru's voice stayed calm. "Then we do not follow like sheep." He split again. 2 Rimuru slid down the hallways in opposite directions. Chris whispered, "You can't split too much. Does it weaken you?" Rimuru answered honestly, "Not much. But it divides my attention." Chris nodded. "Then keep one with us." Rimuru said, "Yes." They advanced. The facility tried everything. A hallway filled with white gas. Rimuru sealed their lungs with a thin barrier and filtered air like a mask. Turrets popped from walls. Rimuru bent his barrier into angles that made bullets ricochet away from them and into the floor. A door slammed shut with Leon on one side and Chris on the other. Leon's breath hitched. Then Rimuru's body flattened, slipped under the door like water, and opened it from the other side. Leon stared. "That's not fair." Rimuru sounded almost curious. "Fair?" Leon shook his head. "Never mind." They reached a glass room. Inside were people strapped to chairs. Men and women, different ages. Some had clear symptoms. Veins dark under the skin, tremors, eyes half gone. But they were alive. Some looked up and cried. One person screamed, "Don't let them take me!" Chris moved to the controls. "Locked." Jill scanned corners. "Cameras everywhere." Leon stepped to the glass, voice gentle. "We're here. We're getting you out." Rimuru hovered close to the glass. His voice softened in a way Chris hadn't heard yet. "I can help," Rimuru said. "If you want it." A woman with shaking hands stared at him. "Are you real?" Rimuru answered. "Yes." A man spit blood and laughed like he'd lost his mind. "They made a cure monster." Rimuru flinched, just a little. Chris felt anger rise again. Not at Rimuru, at the people who had done this. The speaker crackled again. "You want to play hero," the voice said. "Then cure them. Show us." Leon's eyes narrowed. "They're watching to learn." Jill whispered, "This is a test." Chris looked at Rimuru. "Don't do it if it risks them." Rimuru's voice stayed calm, but his focus sharpened. "I won't force anything," Rimuru said. He raised his voice slightly so the captives could hear. "I can try to remove the infection," Rimuru said. "It may hurt, it may take time. I won't do it without your choice." Chris's chest tightened. Consent. In this world, that word had been murdered in a lab and buried under paperwork. A teenage girl in the back lifted her head. She looked like the one from the video. Tears ran down her face. "Please," she whispered. "I don't want to change." Rimuru's voice was gentle. "Okay." Chris's eyes snapped to the speaker. "Open the door." No answer. Chris slammed the control panel. "Open it!" The speaker laughed. Rimuru didn't wait. He slid a thin piece of himself through a tiny crack at the edge of the glass frame, like water finding a way. He moved with extreme care. He reached the girl's chair and touched her wrist. Warm light pulsed through Rimuru's slime, soft and steady. The girl gasped. Her shoulders shook, her breathing slowed. Leon watched, stunned. Jill whispered, "He's slowing it." Chris clenched his fists. "Don't let them learn too much." Rimuru's inner voice spoke through him, calm and quick. "Raphael," Rimuru murmured, barely audible. "Find the strain pattern, find the trigger." "Raphael." Confirmed. Engineered mutation sequence. Multiple fail-safes. Removal possible with layered purification. Risk. Shock to nervous system if rushed. Rimuru's body brightened again, a bit stronger this time. The girl's dark veins faded a little. She sobbed, relief breaking out of her like a wave. I can breathe," she whispered. Chris felt a hard lump in his throat. Then the facility responded. The lights went out. Emergency red strips flickered on. A low hum filled the air, like something waking up. The floor vents opened. Not gas this time. Something thicker. A black, wet growth spread along the tiles like living mold. It moved with purpose. It climbed the walls. It formed shapes that looked like limbs. Rimuru pulled back from the girl, his voice sharp now. "This is the other mind," Rimuru said. Leon raised his gun. "Mold." Jill's eyes widened. "Like the bakers." Chris's chest tightened. He had heard those reports. Rimuru's voice stayed steady. "It's not exactly the same, but it's similar. It can spread. It can think." The black growth surged forward, forming a tall figure in the hallway outside the glass room. It looked like a person made of dark, wet leather. Its head tilted. Then it spoke through the speaker system, but this time the voice sounded closer, more alive. "Give them to me," it said. "Give me your gift." Rimuru's body went still. Chris felt the air change again. Not pressure. Attention. Like the whole building had turned its eyes on Rimuru. Rimuru's voice came out calm, but colder than before. "No," Rimuru said. The mold figure slammed a fist into the glass room wall. The glass cracked. The captive screamed. Chris shouted, "Rimuru!" Rimuru expanded, forming a thick barrier wall between the mold and the captives. The mold slammed again. The barrier held. The mold shifted, then became thinner, trying to slide around the barrier like oil. Rimuru's eyes, if he had eyes, seemed to focus. He did not chase it wildly. He did not flail. He treated it like a problem in a plan. Rimuru split again. One part stayed guarding the captives. Another part slid into the hall to face the mold. Chris and Jill moved with him, guns ready. Leon stayed near the captives, watching for any crack. The mold figure lunged. It moved fast, like it was skipping frames. It tried to wrap around Rimuru's slime and enter him. Rimuru reacted instantly. His body hardened into a clear shell for a moment, forcing the mold to bounce off. Rimuru's voice tightened. "It's trying to infect me." Chris's stomach turned. "Can it?" Rimuru answered. "It can try." That was not comforting. The mold shifted, forming spikes and hooks. It stabbed. Rimuru blocked with barriers, but the spikes left dark smears on the barrier surface. The barrier hissed. Rimuru pulled it back quickly. Jill fired at the mold core. The bullet sank in and disappeared. Useless. Leon's voice crackled over comm. "The captives are screaming. The glass is getting worse." Chris hissed. "We need to end this now." Rimuru's voice stayed focused. "I will separate the mind from the mass." Raphael. Recommend isolation. Mold is distributed. Eliminate central relay node. Suspected location. Deep server room beneath facility. Rimuru turned toward the floor, like he could see through concrete. "Below," Rimuru said. "It's below." Chris didn't hesitate. "Jill, with me. Leon, guard the captives." Leon's voice came back tight. "Got it." Chris looked at Rimuru. "Can you get us down there fast?" Rimuru answered, "Yes." He placed a clear barrier under their feet, then lowered it like an elevator through the open trap hole they'd seen earlier. They dropped into a lower level. Cold air hit them. The smell got worse. This level was older, more hidden, more wrong. They moved through a corridor lined with cables. The mold was here too, crawling along wires like it loved electricity. A door ahead was marked with warning symbols. Chris forced it open. Inside was a room full of servers. Old and new equipment mixed. Screens flickered with code. And in the center, like a heart, was a large black mass pulsing against a metal frame. It looked like a nest. It reacted when Rimuru entered. The nest twitched. A dozen thin tendrils snapped out toward him. Rimuru didn't dodge like a human. He became wider, covering the airspace, catching tendrils before they could touch Chris or Jill. Chris watched, shocked again. Rimuru wasn't just fighting for himself. He was shielding them automatically, like it was part of his nature. Jill aimed at the nest. "How do we kill it?" Rimuru's voice came out steady. "We don't kill blindly," Rimuru said. "We remove it from the system." Chris snarled. "That sounds like the slow way." Rimuru answered, "The safe way." Chris gritted his teeth. He hated it. He respected it. Rimuru surged forward and wrapped the nest in a thick blue shell. The nest pulsed harder, trying to spread through cracks. Rimuru tightened. The nest screamed, not sound, but vibration through the floor. Chris felt it in his bones. Rimuru's voice became a low murmur. "Raphael," Rimuru said. "Purify the relay node, then isolate." Light pulsed through the blue shell. The nest fought back, pushing dark energy into Rimuru's slime. Rimuru trembled once. Chris's heart lurched. For the first time he saw Rimuru strain. Not because the nest was stronger, because the nest was stubborn, because it was designed to cling. Rimuru did not pull away. He held. Then, suddenly, the nest went still. The room's screens flickered. The low hum faded. The mold crawling on the cables stopped moving, like it had lost its orders. Rimuru exhaled. Again. Slime version. But the relief in his voice was real. "It's quiet now," Rimuru said. Jill lowered her gun slowly. "You shut it off." Chris stared at Rimuru's body. Dark smears floated inside him like trapped ink. "You absorbed it," Chris said. Rimuru answered, "I contained the relay. The rest will lose direction." Chris's voice came hard. "And if it's still alive inside you?" Rimuru's tone stayed calm. "It is not free." Chris wanted to argue, but he didn't have time, because above them, the whole facility shook. A siren started, not the normal alarm, a deeper one. The speaker system returned, this time with Kessler's smooth voice. "Impressive," Kessler said. "You see? This is why we must secure you." Chris's eyes went wide. "Kessler is here." Rimuru's voice went cold. "He was watching." Kessler's voice continued, almost cheerful. "Captain Redfield," Kessler said. "We have a team on the surface. We have containment units. We will take custody now. Cooperate, and the captives live." Chris's fists clenched so hard his knuckles hurt. Jill whispered, "He planned this too." Rimuru's voice stayed steady. "He's using them." Chris looked at Rimuru. "Can you get them out?" Rimuru answered, "Yes." Chris didn't ask how. He just said, "Do it." They raced back up. Rimuru lifted them through the trap hole faster this time, like an elevator without pauses. On the captive level, Leon was pinned behind a desk. Armed men in dark gear had breached through a side corridor. Their helmets had no markings. Kessler's private army. Leon fired 2 shots and dropped 1. Another rushed him. Rimuru surged into the hallway like a wave and slammed a barrier between Leon and the attackers. The attackers crashed into it. One shouted, "Deploy net!" A device fired. A mesh of wires and capsules hit the barrier and stuck. The capsules popped, releasing a pale mist. Rimuru's barrier hissed, as if the mist was eating it. Rimuru's voice sharpened. "It's designed to break my barriers." Chris swore. They prepared. Jill fired at the devices, trying to stop more. Leon shouted, "They're going for the captives!" Rimuru moved. He expanded into a wide sheet, covering the captive chairs and the cracked glass wall like armor. He lifted the entire group, chairs and all, off the floor with a solid slime platform. The captives screamed, then realized they weren't falling. Rimuru spoke gently to them, even now. "You're safe," Rimuru said. "Hold still." Chris watched the way Rimuru spoke to victims while being attacked by professionals. This was what Chris had warned about. This world would punish kindness. Kessler's voice came again, louder, angry now. "Stop!" Kessler shouted through speakers. "You are damaging property!" Chris almost laughed again. Property. Rimuru didn't answer Kessler. He moved the captives toward the back hall. Leon ran beside them, guiding, protecting. Jill covered the rear, shooting with clean precision. Chris stayed near Rimuru, eyes scanning for the real trap. It came fast. A heavy door slammed down ahead, blocking the exit route. A second door slammed behind them. They were locked in a corridor. The walls lit up with bright white lines. Laser grid. Then, from ceiling vents, another mist began to pour. Not barrier eating this time. Something else. Rimuru's voice went tight. "This is targeted at humans." Chris felt it immediately. His throat burned. His vision blurred. Leon coughed. The captives panicked, strapped to chairs, breathing poison. Jill's face twisted with anger. Rimuru moved like he had been waiting for this. He expanded around every human like a second skin, sealing their mouths and noses with filtered air. The coughing stopped. Chris's lungs cleared. Leon's eyes widened as he realized he could breathe again. Rimuru's voice stayed steady, but there was strain. "I can protect you," Rimuru said, "but we must leave fast." Chris said, "How do we open the door?" Rimuru looked at the metal like it was paper. Then he did not melt it. He did not smash it. He did something smarter. He slid a thin strand of slime into the door's lock mechanism through a tiny seam, found the moving parts, and turned them from the inside. The door clicked. It opened. Jill exhaled. Almost impressed despite herself. "That's clean." They pushed out into the loading bay. And there was Kessler, not in a suit now, in tactical gear. He stood behind a line of armed men. Behind them were trucks with reinforced containers. He raised a hand like he was greeting a business partner. "Rimuru," Kessler called. "You did well. Now come peacefully." Rimuru hovered forward, captives behind him on a slime platform. "I won't go into a box," Rimuru said calmly. Kessler's smile was gone now. His voice turned cold. "Then you will watch them die," Kessler said. He nodded. A sniper shot cracked. One of the captive chairs jerked. A man screamed. Blood sprayed. Leon shouted, "No!" Chris's body moved before his mind did. He raised his rifle to shoot Kessler, but Rimuru moved faster. A barrier snapped into place between the snipers and the captives. Another barrier snapped around Kessler's men, pinning their guns in place mid-raise. Rimuru's voice dropped, still calm, but sharper than ice. "Do not," Rimuru said. Kessler's eyes widened. He struggled against the invisible force. "You can't stop all of us," Kessler snarled. Rimuru didn't shout. He simply lifted his slime platform higher, like a gentle elevator, and moved the captives beyond the bay door. Chris and Jill and Leon followed. Kessler's men fired into the air uselessly. The barriers held. Kessler screamed, "You're proving my point." Rimuru didn't answer. He was already leaving, because Rimuru was not here to win an argument. He was here to save lives. They escaped into the forest edge. Vehicles waited where Jill had planned. Chris looked back once. He saw Kessler's face behind the bay door. He saw rage. And something else. Satisfaction. Like Kessler didn't care that he had failed to capture Rimuru today. Because something else was already in motion. They got the captives to the safe zone before sunrise. The nurse ran forward, hands shaking, eyes wide. Rimuru gently set the chairs down. Some captives sobbed. Some stared at Rimuru like he was the only reason they still existed. Leon crouched beside the teenage girl and spoke softly. "You're safe," Leon said. "We got you." The girl looked past Leon at Rimuru. "Are they going to take you?" she whispered. Rimuru hovered closer and spoke gently. "I won't let them," Rimuru said. "And I won't let them take you either." Chris watched the scene. and felt something twist in his chest. This was why Rimuru was dangerous. Not because he could destroy a city, because he could give people hope. Hope made people brave. Hope also made powerful men desperate. Jill approached Chris, voice low. "They're going to frame him," Jill said. "If they can't cage him, they'll turn the world against him." Chris nodded slowly. "Yeah." Leon walked up too, face hard. "They already started," Leon said. He showed his phone. A new video was trending. A cut-up clip of Rimuru wrapping around the captives in the gas corridor. It was edited to look like Rimuru was swallowing them. The caption read, "The slime monster is eating survivors." Chris's blood went cold. "That's," Leon started. "A lie," Jill finished. Rimuru floated into the room, hearing everything, because of course he did. He didn't look angry. He looked disappointed. "They're afraid," Rimuru said quietly. Chris snapped. "They're not afraid. They're controlling." Rimuru's voice stayed soft. "Both can be true." Leon watched Rimuru carefully. "What do we do?" Rimuru paused. Then he said, "We show the truth." Chris frowned. "How?" Rimuru answered with the same tone he used when he made a rules board. "Transparency," Rimuru said. "Open doors. Clear rules. Consent. If we hide, they say we're hiding something." Jill stared at him. "You want to go public?" Rimuru said. "Not everywhere, but enough." Chris felt his stomach drop. Going public was dangerous, but staying hidden was also dangerous, because Kessler had already chosen the battlefield. It wasn't a lab. It wasn't a hallway. It was the story. And if they lost the story, they would lose everything. Rimuru floated toward the safe house board and added a new rule at the bottom. 6. We don't lie. Even when people lie about us. Chris stared at it. Then, against his will, he felt something like respect settle again. Rimuru wasn't just surviving, he was building. And somewhere far away, in a dark room with a glowing screen, Wesker watched the framing video go viral and smiled. "Good," he said softly. "Now, he has to defend hope." He leaned back. "And defending hope," Wesker whispered, "is exhausting." The safehouse lights stayed on through the night. Outside, the world argued about whether Rimuru was a savior or a monster. Inside, Rimuru kept writing rules, and the next threat was already moving, not toward Rimuru's body, but toward his name. 2 weeks changed the safe zone more than 2 years ever could. It started with small things that made people stop jumping at every sound. A door that closed the same way every time. Lights that stayed on all night. Clean water that did not taste like metal. A place to sleep where nobody woke up to screaming. Rimuru made those small things feel normal, and that scared Chris more than the monsters did. Because normal was rare here, and anything rare got hunted. Chris stood in the main room of the safe house and watched people move around a white board that had grown into a full wall of rules. It wasn't just "don't lie" anymore. It had sections: medical, security, supplies, check-ins, emergency signals. Rimuru had even drawn simple shapes next to the rules so kids could understand them. Leon walked in with a box of radios and stared at the wall. "He added categories," Leon said. Chris grunted. Of course he did. Jill came in behind them, holding a clipboard she never asked for, but somehow ended up carrying anyway. "We have 3 new arrivals," Jill said. "One has a bite they hid for 12 hours. Chris swore. "Bring them to medical." Rimuru floated down from the ceiling corner, where he liked to stand during meetings. He didn't loom on purpose. He just didn't understand why humans needed chairs when floating existed. His voice was calm. Did they hide it because they were scared? Jill nodded. "Yeah." Rimuru paused. "Then we changed the rule explanation, not the rule." Chris stared at him. You're going to rewrite the speech again." Rimuru sounded serious. "If the speech fails, the rule fails." Leon muttered, "He's right." Chris didn't like that Leon kept being right. Rimuru slid to the medical corner where the retired nurse ran supplies like she'd been waiting her whole life to boss people in a crisis. Rimuru didn't take over. He asked questions. He listened. Then he quietly made the hardest part easier. He stopped bleeding with a touch. He slowed infection with a careful filter inside his slime. He did not promise miracles. And he never forced anyone. That part mattered most. Some survivors called him an angel when they thought he couldn't hear. Some called him a monster when they thought he couldn't hear. Rimuru heard everything. He didn't pretend he didn't. He just kept building. Chris walked outside to the perimeter. The safe zone sat near the edge of a damaged town, far enough from the worst hotspots, close enough to reach outbreaks quickly. Their fences were real metal, but the real defense was invisible. Rimuru's barriers were layered like clear walls inside the air. Chris had tested them. He hated how solid they were. He hated it because it meant nobody could break in unless Rimuru allowed it. And that meant the safe zone was only as safe as Rimuru's trust. Leon joined Chris, holding a small tablet. "You've got another request," Leon said. Chris didn't take the tablet right away. "From who?" Leon's eyes hardened. "Official, international, the type with stamps." Chris finally took it. The message was polite on the surface and threatening underneath. "Transfer the anomaly to authorized containment. Non-compliance will result in sanctions." Chris exhaled through his nose. "They're still calling him an anomaly," Chris said. Leon nodded. "It's easier than calling him a person." Chris looked down the road where a group of kids played with a ball made of taped cloth. They laughed like the world wasn't ending. Chris's chest tightened. He said quietly, "They will come here." Leon answered, "Yeah." Jill stepped out to join them. She held her phone up. "And they're coming in public now." The screen showed a live countdown. Global Biosecurity Briefing today. The Cure Question, featuring Director Kessler. Chris's jaw tightened. "He's putting on a show." Leon's voice went flat. "He's turning it into a stage." Rimuru drifted outside without a sound. His voice came gently, but he didn't pretend he hadn't listened. "Who is Kessler?" Rimuru asked. Chris looked at him. "A man who wants to own you." Rimuru's body tilted. "Then why is he doing a briefing?" Jill answered, "Because he can't take you quietly. So he's trying to make the world demand you." Leon added, "If everyone thinks you're the only cure, they'll riot for you." Rimuru went quiet. Inside his mind, Raphael's calm voice spoke. "Raphael, public pressure is a useful weapon. Probability of forced extraction attempt during public event. High." Rimuru's voice came back, soft. "He wants a crowd to push me," Chris nodded. "Exactly." Rimuru asked, "Can we stop the briefing?" Leon shook his head. "Not without looking guilty." Chris hated the word guilty in this context. Jill crossed her arms. "If we do nothing, he controls the story." Rimuru paused. Then he said, "Then we show the truth before he twists it." Chris stared at him. "How?" Rimuru's answer was simple. "A meeting." Leon made a sound like a laugh escaped by accident. Jill rubbed her forehead. Chris didn't laugh. But they did the meeting anyway. They stood around a table in the safe zone's small office room. A map, a list of names, a list of risks. Rimuru kept it short because he'd learned humans lost focus when fear stayed high. "Goal 1, Rimuru said. Protect civilians." Chris nodded. "Always." "Goal 2, Rimuru said. Do not let anyone become property." Jill said, "Agreed." "Goal 3, Rimuru said. Do not give Kessler a lie he can use." Leon exhaled. "Hard, but yes." Rimuru's tone stayed calm. Then we answer one thing publicly, not everything. Chris frowned. You want to speak? Rimuru answered. I want to be seen as a person, not a rumor. Jill watched him closely. And if the world tries to grab you on camera? Rimuru said. Then they learned something. Chris's stomach tightened. What? Rimuru's voice didn't change, but the meaning did. That I don't hurt people, Rimuru said, even when they try to hurt me. Leon looked at Chris like he was silently asking, Is this the best plan we have? Chris didn't like it, but it might be the only plan that didn't end with blood. They didn't go to Kessler's briefing location. That was his stage. They made their own. A simple broadcast from the safe zone. One camera, one clear background. No dramatic music, no logos. Chris stood off to the side with Jill and Leon, ready to pull the plug if anything went wrong. Rimuru floated in front of the lens. He didn't try to look heroic. He just spoke. My name is Rimuru, he said. I am not from this world. I didn't choose to arrive here. But people are suffering, so I am helping. His voice stayed simple. I cannot cure everything, Rimuru said. Some infections are weapons. Some bodies are too damaged. But I can slow and contain, and sometimes heal. I will not force anyone to change. You get to choose what happens to your body. Chris felt the room go silent behind him. Rimuru added one more line. And I will not be owned, Rimuru said. If you want help, speak like a human, not like a cage. Leon's eyes widened slightly. Jill's jaw tightened. Chris didn't know if it was brilliant or reckless. The broadcast ended. Within minutes, the response hit like a wave. Some messages were thankful. Some were terrified. Some were full of hate. And then Kessler's briefing began. Every screen in the command room showed him standing at a podium. Bright lights, a clean room, flags, a crowd of officials. Kessler's smile was smooth, practiced. He didn't mention Rimuru by name. He didn't need to. He called him the organism again. He called him a dangerous unknown. Then he played a clip of Rimuru's broadcast, cut into pieces. He removed the lines about consent. He removed the line about not curing everything. He left only this. I can heal. He leaned into the microphone. You see, Kessler said, this is why we must secure the anomaly. He admits he can change human biology. He admits he is not from this world. If we do not contain him, we risk global collapse. Chris slammed a fist into the table. Liar! Jill's eyes were cold. He's setting fear on purpose. Leon stared at the screen. And people will believe it because they want to. Rimuru hovered quietly, watching. His voice was soft. He's afraid of me, Rimuru said. Chris snapped. He's greedy. Rimuru didn't argue. He only said, then he will push harder. He was right. The push came that same night. A convoy appeared on the highway near the safe zone. Bright lights, loudspeakers. Official markings this time. They weren't hiding anymore. Chris watched from a rooftop with binoculars. Jill stood beside him. Leon listened to radio chatter. The convoy stopped at the perimeter line. A new voice boomed over speakers. This is an authorized global containment operation, the voice said. Transfer the anomaly immediately. Failure to comply will be treated as hostile action. Chris's blood ran hot. Jill whispered. They're using legal words as weapons. Leon hissed. There are cameras, news drones. Chris looked up. Sure enough, drones hovered above the convoy. A few moved toward the safe zone, scanning. Rimuru floated up beside them. Chris, Rimuru said quietly. Do you want me to leave? Chris stared at him. Part of him wanted to say yes, just to spare the safe zone. Then Chris looked back at the sleeping buildings behind them. The kids, the wounded, the people who finally felt safe. Chris said, No. Rimuru's tone stayed calm. Then we need to avoid blood. Chris nodded, jaw tight. Yes. Rimuru drifted forward alone, visible in the moonlight. The drones immediately locked onto him like hungry eyes. A dozen phones in the convoy lifted. People started recording. Rimuru stopped at the perimeter line just outside the fence. He did not cross toward them. He kept distance. His voice carried, clear and polite. I will not go with you, Rimuru said. A man in tactical gear stepped forward. Not Kessler. Someone lower. You have no choice, the man said. Rimuru asked, why? The man's voice sharpened. Because the world demands it. Rimuru paused, then replied simply, the world is not one person with a gun. The man signaled. A device fired. A net of thin wires and capsules shot through the air, aimed at Rimuru. The capsules burst mid-flight, spreading the pale mist that had eaten Rimuru's barriers before. Rimuru didn't dodge. He watched it with calm focus. The mist hit the air around him. It tried to break his barrier. Rimuru's barrier shifted, not resisting like a wall, but moving like a filter. The mist thinned, redirected, separated. It fell to the ground like harmless fog. Chris's eyes widened. Rimuru's voice was soft, almost curious. I learned, Rimuru said. The tactical man froze. Then he raised his weapon. Rimuru didn't move toward him. He didn't attack. He did something worse for them. He made the whole operation look pointless. A clear barrier rose between the convoy and the safe zone. Tall and wide, like an invisible curtain. Their vehicles could not pass. Their drones could not cross. They were blocked without a single shot. The tactical man shouted, "You're obstructing an authorized—" Rimuru cut in gently. Leave. The convoy held position for 10 minutes. During those 10 minutes, Chris watched the drones. He watched the way they adjusted, the way they scanned the barrier edges. They weren't here to negotiate. They were here to collect data. Then the convoy retreated, not because they accepted defeat, because they got what they came for. Jill's voice was low. That was a test. Leon's eyes narrowed. They wanted to see what he'd do under pressure. Chris looked at Rimuru, and now they know. Rimuru's voice was quiet. They will try again. Chris answered, yeah. Rimuru hovered back toward the buildings. We need to make the safe zone stronger. Chris almost laughed. Stronger? Rimuru sounded serious. More stable, more independent, less easy to threaten. Jill stared at him. You're building a country. Rimuru's voice was calm. A small one. Leon muttered. In the middle of a nightmare. Rimuru replied, that is when people need it most. The next day, the temptation came, not as a convoy, as a message. A secure call request appeared on the command screen. The source was masked behind layers of authority. Chris wanted to reject it. Rimuru said, we should listen. Information matters. Chris didn't like that either, but he accepted. The screen flickered. A man appeared, face sharp, posture perfect, voice smooth like it had never been raised in panic. Albert Wesker. Leon's hand went to his gun without thinking. Jill's eyes turned into ice. Chris's whole body tightened. Rimuru hovered in front of the screen, calm but alert. Wesker smiled. So, Wesker said, you are the miracle. Rimuru didn't smile back. Who are you? Wesker's eyes glinted. Someone who understands what this world truly is. Chris stepped forward. Cut the call. Wesker's smile widened slightly. Still barking, Redfield. Some habits never die. Chris's voice was a growl. Say what you want, then disappear. Wesker's gaze returned to Rimuru. I will be direct, Wesker said. You want to stop suffering. You want order. You want a home where people are not used. Rimuru's voice stayed calm. Yes. Wesker nodded as if he expected that answer. Then you and I share a goal. Jill's voice cut in sharp. No, you don't. Wesker ignored her. This world keeps creating outbreaks because humans are weak, he said. They fear death. They fear change. They cling to old rules that no longer serve them. Rimuru's tone hardened slightly. I like rules. Wesker's smile turned amused. Then you will love my offer. He leaned closer to the camera. Give me a piece of you, Wesker said. A sample. Enough to study. Enough to replicate your purification. In exchange, I will end the cycle. Chris's fists clenched. He means mass production. Wesker's eyes flicked to Chris. Of course he does. That's how you fix a world. Rimuru asked, What happens to the people you call weak? Wesker's smile didn't move, but something colder settled in his eyes. They evolve, Wesker said, or they get out of the way. The room went still. Rimuru's voice went quiet. That's not healing. Wesker sighed like Rimuru was disappointing him. You're wasting your time building little fences, Wesker said. You can reshape biology itself. You can remove fear by removing fragility. Jill's voice was flat. You're insane. Wesker looked at her like she was a child. I'm honest. Then he did the real move. He lowered his voice. You're attached, Wesker said to Rimuru. To these humans. To your safe zone. They are your handle. Chris felt a cold spike in his chest. Wesker smiled again. Tonight, Wesker said, a new release will occur. Not here. Somewhere more public. Somewhere cameras will watch. Kessler will blame you. The world will scream for your cage. Leon's voice came tight. Where? Wesker's eyes stayed on Rimuru. If you want to stop it, Wesker said, meet me alone. Chris shouted, No! Rimuru didn't answer right away. Wesker continued, calm as a knife. Meet me, Wesker said, and I will tell you where. Refuse, and you will watch your system crumble under panic. The call ended. Chris slammed the desk so hard the screen shook. That's a trap, Chris snapped. That's always a trap. Leon's face was pale. He said Kessler will blame Rimuru. That fits. Jill looked at Rimuru. What are you thinking? Rimuru floated silently for a moment. Then he said, He's right about one thing. Chris's heart dropped. Don't. Rimuru's voice stayed steady. They will use the story. They will hurt people to force me. Chris clenched his jaw. So we don't play their game. Rimuru turned slightly, like he was staring at something distant only he could sense. I can stop the release, Rimuru said, even without Wesker. Leon blinked. How? Rimuru answered simply. I will listen. I will find it. Chris stared at him. You can track an outbreak by listening? Rimuru's voice was calm. Fear is loud. Infection is loud. People about to die are loud. Jill's face tightened. That's not a plan. That's a feeling. Rimuru replied, Raphael will turn it into a plan. Inside him, Raphael answered before anyone could. Raphael. Wide area scan possible. Recommend split bodies for simultaneous search and response. Rimuru's body rippled. He split. One Rimuru stayed in the room, facing Chris, Jill, and Leon. 3 more slipped out through cracks and vents like silent drops. Chris grabbed Rimuru's attention. If you go out there, they'll try to capture you on camera again. Rimuru said, Then I won't fight on their camera. I will save people on their camera. Chris hated how clean that sounded. Jill asked, What about Wesker's meeting? Rimuru's voice went firm. I won't go alone. Chris snapped. He demanded alone. Rimuru answered. He demanded control. He won't get it. Leon exhaled. So we shadow you. Rimuru said, "Yes." They moved fast. Rimuru's split bodies reported pieces of the city like they were drones made of calm. One found unusual shipments near a downtown convention center. Another heard heavy trucks moving toward ventilation access points. Another sensed a cluster of terrified people somewhere underground. Rimuru's voice tightened. "It's a public event." Chris's gut sank. "What kind?" Leon checked his tablet. "There's a Biosecurity Solutions Expo today, sponsored by—" He stopped. Jill finished the sentence with disgust. "Kessler." Chris felt rage rise again. "He's staging it." They drove toward the convention center as sirens began to echo from far away. By the time they arrived, crowds were already forming outside. Signs, shouting, people demanding answers. News drones hovered above it all. Kessler stood on a raised stage outside the main entrance, surrounded by security. He looked like a man delivering hope. Chris saw the trap immediately. Crowds meant chaos. Chaos meant cover. Kessler's voice boomed from speakers. "Today, we will take the necessary step to secure humanity's future," Kessler declared. "Today, we will contain the anomaly and begin real cure research." The crowd cheered and screamed at the same time. Rimuru hovered above a nearby rooftop, hidden behind a thin distortion barrier. He watched like a quiet storm. Chris stood beside him. Crouched, Jill and Leon were on opposite rooftops, keeping eyes on doors and vents. Rimuru spoke softly. "There are infected inside." Chris's chest tightened. "How many?" Rimuru's voice stayed calm, but his focus sharpened. "Many. And they are timed." Leon's voice came through calm. "I see trucks backing into a service bay. No markings." Jill replied, "I see security blocking staff exits. They're locking the building." Chris's blood went cold. "He's sealing people inside." Rimuru's voice dropped. "This is the release." Kessler's speech continued. "And we must acknowledge a hard truth," Kessler said. "The anomaly's presence has already caused incidents. We have evidence he has absorbed humans." The crowd roared, angry now. Chris's fists clenched. "He's using the fake video." Rimuru didn't waste time arguing. He moved. He didn't burst through the front doors. That would feed Kessler's story. Instead, he split into 5 bodies at once. One slipped into the building through a ceiling vent. One moved beneath the street through drainage gaps. One stayed outside, ready to handle the crowd if panic exploded. One stayed with Chris. One tracked the air systems. Inside the building, Rimuru's vent body slid through ducts above a massive expo hall. Below him were booths with banners, tech displays, people milling around. But Rimuru's attention wasn't on the booths. It was on the sealed doors and the guards posted with calm faces. It was on the smell. A sharp chemical scent layered over the normal crowd smell. Rimuru's voice came through calm, low. "They planted canisters in the vents," Chris whispered. "Find the control." Rimuru replied, "Already." He followed the ducts to a control room. Inside were men in dark gear with tablets and timers. One wore a headset. Another held a case with the same capsule mist devices. Rimuru's body hardened into a thin blade shape, not to cut flesh, but to cut cables. He sliced the control wires and slammed a barrier over the men before they could react. They shouted. They slammed against invisible walls. Rimuru didn't speak to them. He went to the vent panel and looked at the canister network. Raphael. Confirmed. Airborne release timed to coincide with Kessler's public announcement. Strain includes rapid mutation trigger and panic-inducing neurotoxin. Rimuru's voice tightened. "They added a toxin." Chris's voice went rough. "To cause stampede." Leon's voice cut in. Kessler's security just pushed the crowd closer. "He wants them right there," Jill added. Snipers on the roofline across from the stage. Not ours, Chris swore. They want casualties on camera. Rimuru moved fast. He didn't try to remove every canister by hand. He rewrote the problem. He expanded into the vent system like water-filling pipes. A thin blue layer spread through ducts, wrapping each canister like a soft glove. Rimuru spoke quietly. I'm isolating the release points. Kessler's voice outside rose to a climax. And now, Kessler declared, we will show the world what containment looks like. He turned, gesturing dramatically toward the building. Chris's stomach dropped. Kessler wasn't just going to release infection and blame Rimuru. He was going to stop it publicly, using containment units to make himself look like the hero. Rimuru's outside body saw the service bay doors open. A heavy reinforced container rolled out on a platform. It looked like a prison box, with tiny vents and thick locks. The crowd gasped. Kessler lifted his hands. This is designed to hold the anomaly safely, Kessler said. He will be transferred today. Chris snarled under his breath. He's daring us. Then the release began. It didn't show as smoke right away. It was invisible. People inside the building started coughing. One man grabbed his throat and fell. Another stumbled into a booth, knocking it over. A woman screamed. The crowd outside reacted to the screams through the glass entrance. Panic spread in waves. Kessler's security stepped forward like they were ready, pushing people back with shields. Kessler raised his voice, calm and strong. "Stay back!" Kessler shouted. This is exactly why we need containment. The anomaly's presence destabilizes the environment. Chris's eyes went wide. He's blaming Rimuru live. Rimuru's voice came through calm, steady but urgent. I can stop the airborne spread, Rimuru said. But if the crowd crushes itself, people still die. Chris swallowed hard. Then we stop both. Leon shouted. People are trying to break in to save family inside. Jill snapped. Security is blocking exits. They're trapping them. Chris's mind raced. He looked at Rimuru. Can you open safe exits without looking like an attack? Rimuru's answer came fast. Yes. Rimuru's outside body expanded into a wide, clear canopy over a section of the crowd, gently pushing people apart so they wouldn't crush each other. It didn't throw them. It guided them like hands on shoulders. People stumbled, then found space to breathe. Some screamed, "Monster!" anyway. Some shouted, "Help us!" and reached up like Rimuru was a helicopter. Rimuru's vent body inside the building did the harder part. He sealed the infection inside his vent layer and began purification in layers, like cleaning a filter slowly so it didn't break. At the same time, he created clear corridors inside the expo hall, thin walls guiding people toward exits that security hadn't blocked. Leon and Jill kicked open an emergency side door from the outside, fighting past a pair of Kessler's guards who tried to stop them. Leon shouted, "BSAA, move! This way!" Jill kept her weapon low but ready. "Don't push! Keep moving!" Chris stayed with Rimuru outside, eyes scanning the roofline. He saw the snipers adjust. They weren't aiming at Rimuru. They were aiming into the crowd. Chris's blood froze. He shouted into calm. "They're going to shoot civilians!" Rimuru's voice tightened. To make panic worse, Chris said, "Can you block them?" Rimuru replied, "Yes." A clear barrier snapped up like a vertical wall between the sniper line and the crowd. Shots cracked. Bullets hit invisible air and fell. The snipers panicked and moved positions. Chris's mind screamed one thought. They planned for barriers. They planned for mistakes. What's the next layer? He got his answer right away. Wesker appeared. Not on a screen. In real space. Chris saw him on the far rooftop, standing like he owned the sky. Calm. Still. Watching the entire scene like it was a test. Chris's heart punched his ribs. Wesker. Rimuru's body tensed slightly beside Chris. That's him. Wesker didn't shout. He didn't wave. He simply stepped off the rooftop and landed on the stage behind Kessler like gravity was a suggestion. Kessler's eyes widened. For the first time, his confidence broke. "Who?" Kessler began. Wesker didn't even look at him. He looked up toward Rimuru's position as if he could see through every trick. His voice carried, smooth and clear, even without a microphone. "You chose the messy option," Wesker said. "Interesting." Rimuru's voice came quiet. "He's here to take a sample." Chris's throat went dry. "Don't let him near you." Wesker raised one hand. Kessler's guards around the stage suddenly stiffened. Not from fear, from control. Their eyes went glassy. They turned their weapons outward, not at Rimuru, but at the crowd. Chris's stomach dropped. "He's using them," Wesker spoke calmly. "You're building rules," he said, looking at Rimuru. "I'm showing you what humans do with rules." Then Wesker nodded once. A guard raised his gun. A shot cracked. A civilian fell. The scream that followed was pure animal panic. Chris's whole body surged forward. Jill and Leon heard it too through comm. Leon shouted, "No!" Rimuru moved. He did not rush Wesker with rage. He rushed the falling people. A barrier caught the crowd like a net, stopping the crush wave before it became a stampede. A second barrier sealed the wounded area from being trampled. Rimuru's voice came tight, controlled. "Leon, Jill, protect the exits. Chris, stop the shooters." Chris didn't argue this time. He ran along the rooftop edge, moving toward the sniper line and stage angle. Wesker watched Rimuru save people and smiled as if he had proven a point. "You see?" Wesker said softly. "You can't win by being kind." Kindness is a leash. Rimuru's voice went cold. "No. Kindness is a choice." Wesker's eyes sharpened. "Then choose." Wesker leaped. He crossed the distance between stage and rooftop in a blur aimed straight for Rimuru. Chris shouted, "Rimuru!" Rimuru didn't panic. He split again. One Rimuru stayed to keep barriers protecting civilians. Another, Rimuru formed midair to meet Wesker's path. Wesker's speed was insane for a human. His kick cracked concrete when he landed. He struck at the new Rimuru body with precision, like he was trying to break a container, not fight a person. Rimuru's body bent around the blow and reformed. Wesker's eyes narrowed. Adaptive, as expected. Rimuru didn't throw punches. He used space. A clear cube snapped around Wesker, trying to lock him in place. Wesker slammed a fist into the cube. It cracked. Chris's eyes widened. Wesker could break Rimuru's barrier with raw force, not because he was stronger than Rimuru overall, but because he was concentrated, fast, and ruthless. Rimuru's voice tightened. "He's very strong," Chris hissed into comm. "Don't let him touch you." Wesker smiled inside the cracking cube. "I only need a drop." He forced the cube open and lunged, fingers extended like claws. Rimuru reacted instantly. He didn't block with a barrier. He pulled away and hardened a thin layer over his surface, like armor. Wesker's fingers scraped that layer and pulled a smear. A tiny amount of blue slime stretched, then snapped back. Wesker landed lightly, holding something in a sealed vial he'd already prepared. Chris's blood went cold. "He got it," Chris whispered. Rimuru went still for half a second, not shocked by pain. Shocked by the meaning. Wesker smiled. "Thank you." Rimuru's voice was low and steady. "Give it back." Wesker laughed softly. "No." Behind them, Kessler tried to regain control, shouting into microphones about the anomaly and containment. Wesker didn't care about Kessler's speech anymore. Kessler was noise. Wesker cared about the vial. Chris raised his rifle from across a rooftop gap and aimed at Wesker's hand. Wesker's eyes flicked to Chris, amused. "Still trying," Wesker said. Chris fired. The shot was perfect. Wesker moved anyway. The bullet hit the vial, shattering it. Chris's heart jumped, but the blue smear didn't fall. It stuck to Wesker's glove like glue. Wesker's smile faded for the first time. Rimuru's voice sharpened. "It's connected." Wesker looked down, annoyed. Rimuru didn't yank it back like a rope. He didn't try to absorb Wesker. He did something smarter. He neutralized what was taken. Inside Wesker's glove, the blue smear turned clear, then inert, like water with no life. Wesker's eyes narrowed. "You can kill your own sample," Wesker said. Rimuru's voice stayed steady. "It's not yours." Wesker's expression turned colder. He signaled with 2 fingers. Below, Kessler's container unit opened its vents. A new cloud of pale mist blasted outward, thicker than before, aimed at the crowd and at the building exits. Leon shouted through comm, coughing, "They released the barrier eater again, this time near people!" Rimuru's voice snapped, urgent. "I'm stopping it." Wesker moved again, trying to keep Rimuru engaged while the chaos grew. Rimuru split. 1 part focused on Wesker, 3 parts focused on the mist, the crowd, and the expo hall. Chris realized the real trap now. They were stretching Rimuru's attention, not weakening his power, trying to overload his priorities. Chris shouted into comm. "We need to remove Kessler's devices, now!" Jill replied, breath tight. "On it!" Leon coughed. "I'm moving people away." Jill sprinted across the expo interior, climbing a booth structure to reach a vent release pack. She ripped it loose and tossed it into a side room. Leon grabbed 2 panicking civilians, dragging them into a clear corridor Rimuru had created. Outside, Chris ran along rooftops toward the stage line, eyes locked on Kessler's control team. He fired at a device operator. The man dropped. Not dead. Hit in the shoulder. Chris didn't care about killing today. He cared about stopping the machine. Rimuru's outside body handled the mist in a way that made Chris's brain stutter. Instead of trying to block it with one barrier, Rimuru made many small layers, like stacked clear sheets. Each sheet caught a piece of the mist, separated it, and dropped it to the ground before it could spread. People watched, mouths open, as the monster carefully protected them. Some started shouting, "He's saving us!" Others shouted, "It's a trick!" Rimuru didn't answer either side. He just kept saving people. Wesker struck again. His fist slammed into Rimuru's barrier and shattered it. Rimuru slipped back, not hurt, but forced to keep distance. Wesker's voice was quiet now, aimed only at Rimuru. "You're spending yourself on insects," Wesker said. "You could end this world's suffering by force." Rimuru's voice was low and hard. "Force creates new suffering." Wesker's eyes narrowed. "Then you'll be trapped in endless cleanup. Outbreak after outbreak. Lie after lie. They will keep doing it." Rimuru answered, "Not if we remove their ability to do it." Wesker tilted his head. "And how will you do that without control?" Rimuru's voice was calm again, but colder. "By protecting people until they stop obeying monsters." Wesker actually looked interested, as if Rimuru had finally said something worth hearing. Then a sharp alarm blared from inside the expo hall. Leon shouted through comm, "There's another timed release. Different strain. They hit it deeper." Rimuru's voice tightened. "Where?" Leon's voice shook. "Basement lab section. They've got people down there. More hostages." Chris's stomach dropped. "More." Kessler's voice rose again over speakers, desperate now. "See what happens when you refuse containment," Kessler screamed. "He brings disaster wherever he goes." Rimuru's attention pulled downward. Wesker smiled, satisfied. "Choose," Wesker said softly. "Chase me, or save them." Rimuru didn't hesitate. He turned away from Wesker. He went for the hostages. Wesker's smile widened like he'd won. Chris saw it and felt sick. Because Wesker wasn't just escaping. He was proving his point about leashes. Rimuru dropped into the building through a broken skylight, like water falling. He hit the floor without impact, already splitting into two bodies. One body raced toward the basement lab. The other stayed in the expo hall, guiding civilians out through clear corridors and sealed doors. In the basement, the air was colder, cleaner, too clean. A row of sealed rooms lined the hall. Inside were people in lab gowns, eyes wide, hands shaking. Real scientists. Some looked trapped, not evil. A timer on the wall counted down. The note 57. Rimuru's voice went sharp. Stop the timer. Raphael. Timer linked to sealed canister system. Disable by severing power conduit in maintenance shaft. Rimuru split again. One Rimuru slid into the maintenance shaft through a vent seam. The other moved to the sealed rooms, speaking loudly enough for the trapped people to hear. Stay calm, Rimuru said. I will open safe exits. Do not run. Follow the clear walls. A woman in a lab coat pressed her face to the glass. You're not real, she whispered. Rimuru answered. I'm real enough to stop this. He glanced at her ID badge. He didn't recognize the name, but he recognized fear that wasn't acting. Did you make this? Rimuru asked. The woman's eyes filled with tears. No. They took the facility. They forced us. Rimuru's voice stayed steady. Then don't waste time blaming yourself. Help me stop it. The woman blinked, stunned by the directness. Then she nodded fast. The conduit, she started. I know, Rimuru said. In the maintenance shaft, Rimuru's other body found the power line feeding the canister system. He didn't rip it violently. He isolated it with slime, redirected the current into a dead loop, and cut it clean. The timer on the wall stuttered. It froze at 0.21. The basement rooms stayed sealed, but the vents stopped humming. Rimuru exhaled. Then he opened the doors, not by breaking them, by unlocking them from the inside like he had before, using slime to move the mechanical parts. People spilled out, shaking, coughing, crying. Rimuru's clear corridors guided them in a line toward the stairs. Above, the expo hall was still chaos, but it was controlled chaos now. The crowd outside had stopped crushing. The mist had been contained. The infection hadn't spread citywide. Chris met Rimuru at the basement stairs, breath hard, eyes wild. You did it? Chris demanded. Rimuru nodded. The releases stopped. Chris's voice cracked with anger. Wesker got away. Rimuru's voice was quiet. Yes. Chris stared at him. He took your sample. Rimuru answered. He tried. Chris blinked. Tried? Rimuru's tone stayed steady. I made it unusable? Chris felt a strange relief he didn't trust. Then Leon's voice came through comm, urgent. Kessler is trying to escape, Leon said. He's moving toward the container truck, Jill added. He's got a security team escorting him. Chris's eyes hardened. We don't let him vanish. Rimuru moved with them back toward the surface. Outside, the stage area was breaking apart. Kessler's guards were fighting to hold a path through the crowd. Some civilians were shouting at them now, pointing at the barriers that had saved lives. Why did you lock us in? Someone screamed. Kessler shoved his way toward the truck, face twisted. This is not your job, he shouted at his own people. Move! Leon appeared from the side, gun up. It's over, Leon said. Drop it. Kessler spun, eyes wild. You don't understand. If we don't contain it, we die. Jill stepped in behind him, weapon steady. You made people die. Kessler's gaze snapped to Rimuru as he floated into view. For 1 second, Kessler's face showed pure hatred. Then it shifted into something like pleading. Rimuru, Kessler said quickly, voice changing into a false softness. Help me. Tell them you'll cooperate. Tell them you'll come quietly." Rimuru stared at him. His voice was calm. "No," Rimuru said. Kessler's mask fell. "You think you're better than us?" Kessler snarled. "You think your rules will fix us?" Rimuru answered, voice still gentle. "No. People fix themselves. But you have to stop hurting them first." Kessler's eyes darted, desperate. He reached into his jacket. Chris shouted, "Gun!" Kessler didn't pull a gun. He pulled a small remote. He slammed the button. For a split second, Chris thought Kessler had another release. Then a loudspeaker on the container truck blared, "Containment protocol active." The container's doors opened wide like a mouth. Inside was not empty. Inside was a new creature. It stepped out, tall and heavy, wrapped in armor-like tissue, with a core pulsing behind its chest like a bright bruise. It looked like the anti-Rimuru boss from the hospital, but refined. Smarter. And it turned its head toward Rimuru like it could smell him. Kessler's voice shook with triumph. "There! Contain that!" The creature lunged. Rimuru didn't freeze. He expanded into a wide barrier that shoved civilians back to safety, creating space so nobody would get crushed. Then he met the creature head-on. It slammed into his barrier and cracked it. Rimuru's voice tightened. "It is built to break barriers." Chris's jaw clenched. "Then don't use barriers." Rimuru's answer came sharp, almost amused, despite everything. "I can use other things." Rimuru's body split into multiple streams and wrapped around the creature's limbs, not to trap it in a box, but to control its movement like ropes. The creature thrashed, spikes forming, trying to cut free. Rimuru hardened parts of his slime into clamps, locking joints. The creature's core pulsed brighter. It tried to self-destruct. Rimuru saw it and moved faster. He didn't contain it with a huge hallway seal like before. He condensed. He formed a tight, thick sphere around the creature's chest only, isolating the core like putting a lid on a bomb. The core detonated. A dull boom shook the air. Rimuru's sphere held. The creature's body went limp, collapsing like a puppet with cut strings. The crowd watched in stunned silence. Kessler stared like his world had cracked. Chris stepped forward, gun trained. "It's done," Chris said. "Hands up." Kessler's eyes darted to the crowd, to cameras, to drones. He realized he couldn't shoot his way out. So he did the only thing left. He tried to turn the story again. "You don't get it," Kessler shouted to the crowd. "He's too powerful! He's controlling you right now!" A woman shouted back, voice raw. "He saved my son!" Another man screamed, "You locked us inside!" The crowd surged toward Kessler, angry now. Chris raised his arms. "Back! Stay back!" Rimuru moved gently, placing clear barriers between Kessler and the crowd. Not to protect Kessler from justice, but to stop a lynch mob. Chris stared at Rimuru. "Why?" Rimuru's voice was quiet. "Because if they kill him, someone else replaces him. And the crowd becomes a weapon too." Chris felt something tight in his chest, loosen and tighten at the same time. Jill cuffed Kessler with a grim expression. "You're going to talk," Kessler spat at the ground. "You think this stops anything?" Leon's eyes were hard. "It stops you." Kessler laughed, bitter. "Wesker will—" Chris slammed Kessler against the truck. "Don't say his name like it saves you." Kessler's grin flickered. "He already got what he wanted." Rimuru's voice cut in, calm but sharp. "No." Kessler blinked. "What?" Rimuru's tone stayed steady. "He didn't." Kessler didn't understand. Chris did. Wesker had tried to take a handle. Rimuru had cut it off. The cameras kept rolling. The crowd kept shouting. And for once, the story didn't belong fully to the suits, because too many people had seen the truth with their own eyes. By the time the sun set, the convention center was locked down by real authorities, who couldn't pretend this was Rimuru's fault anymore, not with witnesses everywhere. Kessler was taken away. Not forever. Chris had learned never to trust forever. But for now, he was off the board. Wesker was gone, also expected. But his shadow felt closer than ever. And Rimuru. Rimuru returned to the safe zone with Chris, Jill, and Leon, quiet as if the day had been a normal patrol. That scared Chris too, because it meant Rimuru could carry impossible weight and keep walking. A week later, the safe zone looked different again. More organized, more stable. Not because the world suddenly got kind, but because the safe zone had become a fact. A place people could point to and say, it exists. Some officials tried to condemn it. Some tried to bargain. Some tried to pretend it was theirs. Chris ignored most of them. He focused on one thing, keeping the place alive. One evening, Chris sat in the small office while Rimuru floated across from him. Leon leaned in a doorway. Jill checked perimeter logs. Chris tossed the latest paper on the table. They want a treaty. Leon raised an eyebrow. A treaty? Chris nodded. They want to recognize the safe zone as a humanitarian site. In exchange, they want oversight. Access. Limits. Jill's mouth tightened. Oversight is a leash. Rimuru's voice was calm. Sometimes oversight is a bridge. Chris stared at Rimuru. You still want to cooperate after everything? Rimuru answered. Simple and honest. Yes, Rimuru said. Because if I build alone, the world stays the same. If I build with some humans, the world can change. Chris exhaled hard. He didn't fully trust the treaty. He didn't fully trust the officials. But he trusted one thing now. Rimuru would keep choosing people over pride. And that mattered. Chris nodded once. Fine, but we write the rules. Rimuru's voice brightened slightly. Yes. Leon groaned softly. Jill hid a small smile. Chris didn't smile, but he didn't feel hopeless either. The night air was quiet in a way that felt unnatural for this world. Rimuru hovered above the safe zone's roof, looking out at the dark streets beyond the fences. There were still sirens in the distance, still fires far away, still infection pockets nobody had reached. The world hadn't become safe. It had just gained one small island of safety. Below, light spilled from windows. People moved without running. Kids laughed again. Rimuru listened to their heartbeats. Some were steady now. Some still shook with fear. He didn't judge them for it. He understood fear. He also understood something else now. This world didn't just fight monsters. It fought itself. A door creaked behind him. Leon stepped onto the roof, hands in his jacket pockets. He looked tired in the way people got when they finally stopped running and started thinking. You always come up here, Leon said. Rimuru's voice was soft. It's quiet. Leon walked closer, stopping a few feet away, respectful distance. He looked out too. They're still talking about you, Leon said. Online, on TV, everywhere. Rimuru asked, What do they say today? Leon shrugged. Depends on the channel. Some say you're a savior. Some say you're a threat. Some say you're a hoax. Rimuru was quiet for a moment. Then he said, In my world. People argued too. Leon glanced at him. Did it ever stop? Rimuru answered honestly. No. Leon exhaled a short laugh. Great. Rimuru's voice warmed slightly. But the arguing wasn't the point. Leon frowned. What was? Rimuru looked down at the safe zone yard where a woman handed a blanket to someone new. No screaming, no shoving. Just help. The point was that people kept living, Rimuru said, even with fear. Leon leaned on the roof ledge. Chris still doesn't trust you. Rimuru replied gently. I know. Leon's voice was quiet. Does that bother you? Rimuru paused. It doesn't hurt, Rimuru said. It protects people. Chris's fear is useful when it's pointed at the right target. Leon nodded slowly. Wesker. Rimuru's voice went colder. Yes. Leon studied Rimuru, then asked the question that had been sitting in his chest for days. Rimuru, Leon said, when Wesker killed that civilian, did you feel angry? Rimuru didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was very soft. Yes, Rimuru said. Leon swallowed. And you still didn't go after him? Rimuru's tone stayed steady. If I chase him, more people die. That's what he wanted. Leon stared out into the dark. He wanted to prove you can't be kind, Rimuru replied. Simple and clear. He was wrong. Leon looked at him. How do you know? Rimuru's voice was gentle, but firm. Because kindness is not a trap, Rimuru said. It's a decision I can make every day. Leon let that sit for a moment. Below, the safe zone's main room lights flickered as someone turned off one corner and left another on. A routine. A normal routine. Leon finally nodded. Yeah, Leon said quietly. That's a good answer. Rimuru drifted down from the roof edge and floated toward the wallboard inside, visible through a window. He could see the rules even from here. He had added a new line at the bottom today. Not a command, a reminder. 7. We protect people even when the world is loud. Leon followed his gaze and smiled faintly. You're never done with that board, are you? Rimuru's voice warmed. No, Rimuru said. That's the point. Leon looked out one last time at the dark city beyond the fences. The world's still out there, Leon said. Still ugly, Rimuru answered, calm and clear. Then we keep building, Rimuru said. And in the safe zone below, life continued. Not perfect, not safe everywhere, but different now. Because someone had shown this world a simple truth. A monster could choose to be human. And humans could choose to stop being monsters, one rule at a time.